image wisdom, and I was like, oh, so yeah, I just need to think about what that means.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep this today, because what I've got today is that I got basically a morning lesson for like reviews, a language art review and a math art review. So I'm gonna go through what my morning lesson would look like, you know, in sort of in detail. I was beginning the year, because the foundation for the rest of the year, because that's what you're doing, you're building the capacities. You know, you're setting the foundation for building the capacities that you want the students to have the rest of the year. You're reviewing, but you're also setting the foundation for building the capacities that you're going to be working on, so that the skills will emerge. And so I want to give a clear picture of what that looks like, so that you can paint. A lot of the resources that I have here, unfortunately, I can't find my music and everything, so you probably have to find other sources for the music and whatnot, because I used to have all this music in a little folder. My class actually made for me. My first class took all the music I used with them and made me a music book of it. I can't find it. So we want to do building the capacities and the beginning of the year reviews, language arts, and math arts. Now, in this case, I would normally in the second grade begin with a language arts block. The reason I would do that is because I know that I want to look into Michaelmas. I want to develop content. I'm going to be having content in the language arts block that will help me develop my Michaelmas program. Because in the way we do it at World School of Louisville, Michaelmas is really a second grade event, because we do the knighting ceremony. Other schools, this can change. Michaelmas can be an 8th grade event, you know, it can be different, but we've always did it as a second grade event, this thing of carriage. And so what I would normally do is that I would start, well, let me preface that with a little bit of talk about what I really want you to look at in terms of supersensible physiology in balancing teachers. We'll talk briefly about that. Now, what he does in that chapter is he looks at the, let me go ahead and put her out, because otherwise she'll sit there and be on the whole time and be out all over here. He is asking the question, traditionally in psychology we talk about having sensory afferent nerve systems and motor systems. And I don't know if you got a chance to read into that or not, but he talks about how the static system is not what it's about, that there's a dynamic system, and what mechanisms, the learning mechanisms that these two, the sensory and the motor, support are perception and memory. And he says basically perception and memory are taken up by one of those systems, you know, in a flexible way. Sometimes the motor system is taking up perception, sometimes the nerve system, sensory system is taking up perception, or vice versa, memory. And what I do with that is I look at the capacities that we're developing every year, the cognitive capacity. Like in the second grade, we're looking at this whole idea of analysis and wholeness. And I ask in that year then, what is going to be the tendency of the, what I would call the visceral, which is the motor, and the sensorial, in terms of, is our memory work going to be done in the visceral? Or is it going to be done in the senses? Is our perceptive organ going to be visceral, or is it going to be sensorial? And so, actually, I'm gonna give an example of the second grade and the third grade. So what's happening in second grade is that we're taking and trying to help the children develop the capacity to recognize sensorially the unity of correspondence that we've worked on in the first grade, which are, number qualities or number wholes and the phoneme blends, and we want to utilize those. And we want the child to be able to recognize or perceive those. And we want them to have that recognition be in response to visceral memory of the language they already have or that we have given them. So like a lot of times in the first grade, they've already learned the poem Brave and True. Mm-hmm. So that should be in their visceral. They should be able to, through movement and everything, that's in their visceral, that they can recall that song, and the verse and the tune and everything should be in the visceral. Now, so that's something that they could then utilize to try to perceive in that memory the phonemic blends. And so that's what's happening. So they learn, brave and true I will be, each good deed sets me free. And they've marched that. And so I can ask them to recall that, and they can recall it. And the question is, can they go from that visceral memory recall to perceiving the phonemic blends? And so we can start the year off with that. Have them and use it as a way of reviewing whether or not they have learned the phonemes and the phonemic blends. And that's what I often do, is that I'll start with that brave and true. And so what that would look like for morning work, what I would have the children do, I usually have morning work. I don't know if you've been having that practice, but when the children come in the morning, because they're coming from a TAMART place, because they're either coming from outdoor play or they're coming from being in cars, so I want to have them a little bit of a space art focus right in the morning to shorten the thing. And so what I do is have them work on, practice the letters, practice making the letters. So you can buy one of those little Mercurius writing tablets appropriate for the second grade. And every morning they can open that up and they can practice their uppercase, or lowercase, and eventually just uppercase and lowercase right besides one another. So that's going to be their morning work for the block, pretty much, is practicing their letters.
With the lines. So I have some books with lines already, so they don't, we made them last year, but we can move into using them.
So you can either use the ones you've already made, or they have these little, practice books that are appropriate for the second grade. And that's what I'll be working on, just to make sure to see how to review what they're doing with the letters. They should have went through it. They should be able to review it. Now, at the same time, here's when you want to bring your Michaelmas song or whatever you're going to use to do your Michaelmas play. And there's several choices for that. I use the song. I don't know if you've heard it before, but it's the country is near and the country is far. The king of that country will watch without fear. It's a really beautiful pentatonic song that goes through the whole story of St. George and the Dragon.
Okay. No, I don't know that one.
And you can also, of course, you can play it in your flute practice time too. But the way I introduce songs is that I simply sing them, start singing them. Oh, you need a pencil?
I wanted to make a note about that song. Here, there's one up here. Do you know what it's called?
I tried to Google it last night because I couldn't find it in my my book, and I just thought it was always called "The Country Is Near, The Country Is Far."
Right.
But somebody around the water school probably has it. I'm still going to look for my songs, but I couldn't Google. I couldn't find it. Water Resources didn't reveal it to me just by Googling. Because I know there's some other ones. There's several Michaelmas poem songs that you can use. Another one I use for Milkum is, and it's just the ones that are traditional here, is Down from the Stars. You know that one? Down from the stars come the sword of the arm of St. Michael, bringing healing strength unto us. They sing that pretty much on a regular basis there. Those are two good Mi'kmaq songs that are pretty well. I'm the only one that has done my play with that country as near as country as far, and so you definitely had other sources for other ones. And so I'm just telling you about introducing songs. You should sing them just in your classroom with the children first, and you can play them. So you rather than try to teach them first, you sing them first. The children hear you and they start taking it up. And then outside of morning lesson, you actually do a singing time where you actually teach the song. But in morning lesson, you can just sing the song. Sure. Right. And so doing morning work, they're doing their practice letters, and I may be singing to them. And then, of course, after that, you have morning greeting. You want to necessarily do that. Because I have morning greeting at that point. Some people have morning greeting after circle. I have morning greeting at that point. And then I have my movement, or circle. And this is important. Here's what I do in my movement. Again, I want to really make sure that they have the phonemic phonemes in their body. So it's another way of viewing. So I actually have a rhythmic letter, what I call a rhythmic letter march. I may have shown it. I don't know if we did this, but where I just basically, we're all standing, after we come to the circle, then we're standing in a circle. And the first thing they usually do is we march, stand in place. Ba, ka, da, ga, ha, ja, ka, ol, na, pa, qua, ra, sa, ta, va, wa, za, you, z. And we do that march, just like that. Okay. And review those phonemes. In that case, I've left out the vowels. That's what that is. That's all that is the vowels left out. Okay. And sung like that. And then
right. Rhythm. Marching phoneme sounds. Okay.
Yeah. And now, I don't know, now actually I have this verse, but I don't know if you use the vowel gesture verse that is kind of used, that goes like this. It goes, on the earth I love to stand strength. So have you sung that with me at all? Now what I usually do is that I have this, I do the gestures. So after I sing each verse, then after I sing the first verse, then I stand still, I wait for them, and then we do this gesture, and we go up toward the middle. And we go down. And I do each verse of that song, and they go with my vowel gestures. I don't know if you have been doing that or you know.
We did that last year. You taught me that.
Okay, so then that's what I do in my circle next. And then I can make sure, so then I'm bringing the vowel gestures, making sure they will respond appropriately to the gestures, which is what they would have had last year. Yeah. And then I do brave and true in the short, long cadence. You know, brave and true. When they're walking, they learn to walk. This time, now you're going to really try to bring that short, long cadence. Brave and true, I will be. Each good deed sets me free. And you're going to try to get them to actually start walking that. That's an important. You actually reverse that later in the upper grades, and you do the long, short cadence. For it's kind of a difference between the lower grades and the upper grades. Okay. In the lower grades, you have that short, long cadence. In the upper grades, you have long, short. So you have short, long in the lower grades. Then you got long, short, long in the upper grades. Okay. And we review brave and true, which they have learned. Remember, that's going to be the foundation really for the writing review, brave and true. And then there may be something else, whatever else you want to bring to the circle, but those are the centerpieces of it. What would be my circle? The point is, I'm using this time mark. So what I've had a space art, And now I'm in this TAMARC, and I am utilizing the TAMARC to really create the visceral memory that I want to be able to bring to the lesson that's going to, out of which I'm going to find the sensorial perceptions of the unity of correspondences, see if they can actually visually bring those out of the memory with brave and true. Now, what I do, though, I do free rendering here. So then they come back to the desk, and I do free rendering. And the free rendering would be on lines of brave and true. So I might say, can you draw a picture of brave and true? You know, and what I do is I create, I make a space at the top and a space at the bottom, and either in the space at the top or the space at the bottom, it doesn't matter. I have them attempt before they turn their paper in to caption it with brave and true.
Okay.
So have them try to do some inventive writing after they have done their free rendering.
Okay.
And so each day I can go for another line like brave and true. The next day I can go for I will be, you know, or it could be brave and true. I would be either one. You can do both of those as a caption, but you don't want to make it too much. Probably 3 words at the beginning is probably as much as you want to get to try to do inventive writing, doing free rendering. Free rendering is only 10-15 minutes.
Right.
So they have some chance to draw into the picture on small sheets of paper. And or that's you have a free rendering book. I don't know how you've been doing that.
My free rendering book. Repeat what you just said. The last. What did you?
You know, you either, depending on, I don't know if you like how you have them do their free renderings. I think I didn't have free rendering books. I just had sheets of paper I gave them.
Oh no, I have a book. Yeah.
Right. So that's what I'm just saying. And in your case, then it'll be in your free rendering book. And what you can do later, see, once they do the inventive writing either above or top, you can go back and write the corrected thing. Don't correct it, write brave and true. So they wrote brave and true in their inventive writing, then you can write just brave and true in the free rendering book. So later, and later on we're gonna be copying those on the board. We're gonna copy from the board. So we're gonna be copying brave and true from the board, and the lesson then will be out of their copying we do from the board. We're going to start trying to see if they can actually learn to underline the phonemic blends visually. So out of this memory of brave and true that they copy on the board, and they practice phonetically, inventive writing in their free rendering. So in their free rendering, they're getting the opportunity to, out of their own consciousness, try to bring what they learned last year and phonetically write it. But later on, as part of our book work, they're going to copy it into their books. And then when we copy in our book, we're going to look at on the board and see if we can recognize the phonemic blends in what we have copied into our books. Okay, now then what I do phoneme blend practice just right after free rendering. Because free rendering has been a little bit of an in-breath. I give a little bit of an out-breath again. And the way I do that is that, you should have I only had the consonants up. I didn't have the vowels. The only letters that I had on the board in front were just those right. Consonants up there. And then what I would do is that I would do a gesture. Like I might do either ah or a. And then they would say it, and then I would point to the letters, and they would know, we're going to do phonemic blends with ah. And so I'd point, they'd go ab, and they would go ab, ek, ad, af, ag, just like that through the letters.
Go down through the board.
Go down through the board. And they would learn to do that. And every day after we did our free rendering, we would practice that. Again, reviewing those phonemic blends, but also, giving them a chance to catch up. Another little poem that I do, I think I may have showed it to you with the vowels also, is that I do this Yeah, and that would be in my circle too. You know, kind of like that. So I would bring that into the circle too.
Before I forget, today or whenever we can I do take a video of you doing the eurythmy gestures of the blends?
Mm-hmm.
There was a little bit of confusion last year, and it seemed like everyone I asked had
a little bit different thing with this one than it blends.
So I'd rather just go off of what you.
And you know, and I got a actual paper with those foamy blends been shown. I have to find it. I have a resource. Because there are these cleansing eurythmic activities that they do in the first, second, elementary school, like with the E-I-O. There's a couple of those. I don't know if you know that one. Mm-hmm. In some schools, they expect the teachers always be doing those, and the children learn how to do these. And so they have examples of the gestures pretty close to the ones I use.
Okay.
And I can show you. I can find that in my resources here, because I don't think I gave it to you last year. So basically, you practice those phonemic blends in response to the vowel gesture. That's very important that you, again, go for the visceral memory. When you do the gesture and don't speak it, you don't say, let's put ah in front of ab. You do the gesture, and then they have to hold that ah, or put the a.
Okay.
And then they give that in response. There's some other practice things you can do around recognizing the phoneme. You can create some other games around recognizing the phonemic blends too. Like I used to do a hopscotch. In the hopscotch, I would have the vowels in the hopscotch, and I would give a letter, and they would have to go through and do the long sound with a letter or the short sound. Like I'd give them the letter B, and it'd be like hopscotch. It had the vowel letters in it, and they say hop, they would have to say bay, B. Bow, boo.
So you'd hand them a consonant letter, and they would have to.
Right.
They would have to.
Sometimes they would toss that. They would toss it, and they would pick whenever they pick it up. So I was really being competitive later on with you.
Yeah.
I had the little consonants made as sort of chord things they could toss, and then they would have to hop through, saying the sounds, and then when they got to where you know how you play hopscotch and you throw that, they picked up, then they had to say that sound with the consonant letter.
Okay.
So, but it can be done. That's just one. There's lots of ways you can do. You can do bingo games, whatever, but you might throw in, depending on how much time you have, some more ways to practice, some games to practice the phonemic blends.
They would like that one. They would like hopscotch.
And then, of course, after you do all the practice, then you do the book work. And the book work is, usually what happens is that whatever you wrote the previous day, and then the first day, of course, you don't have this, you're going to do something different. Whatever you wrote the previous day that's on the board, then you go and you try to, you'll say, like, you're brave and true. And you may say, who can find Ray? Where is Ray? And they'll say, oh, in brave. And can you come up and point to Ray? And the way you teach them to find it, you always look for the A. Or you can say, and so you find the A, and does the A go with the V, or does it go with the R? And it goes with the R, because remember you're teaching them to be able to know that long sounds always have the consonant in front,
right,
and short sounds. So this word is not brave, it's brave. So there's a Ray. And I usually would underline, I'd put my pencil on the consonant, and I'd draw either backwards or forwards draw a line backwards or forwards to the consonant that went with it. So with brave, I'd go and put my chalk or pencil under the A, and I would say, this is Ray. So we have Ray in brave. And, what do we have in and? Find the A, and it's N. There's an N, A-N, for and. And then for true, ooh, but you got to teach them to look for the vowel. This is very important in terms of their capacity to read later when they're reading. It's to look for the vowels first because I had students, the reason they have difficulty reading is they start trying to sound out a word and they get stuck on saying the consonants. and they never get so they can never get the phonetic blend quality of the word. But if they go always looking for the vowel, and they can say, here's a U, it's either going to be a or a oo,
Yeah.
and then they get true, you know. So you model that looking for the vowels.
You did on the other direction too, right? Like the mother bird way, like
right.
ib, ik, id.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then you would put the, you know, on the E for eb, and you would go the other way.
Okay.
And they would see
Sure.
that strategy of looking for that. Now, of course, your story is you're gonna tell in this, you know, if it's a block, it's going to be like this, where you're dealing with getting ready for Michaelmas. You're telling the story of St. George and Joan of Arc. And so that's what I tell during that block, those two stories at the end of that day. And so that's what my review pretty much looks like, that, except each day I just add. Maybe the first day, you got to determine how much you want to do. Is it going to be just brave and true, or is it going to be brave and true, I will be? You can spread this part out to at least 2 weeks. If you do brave and true, I will be, each good deed sets me free. But I only do 3, thanks to my book work. I have a rhythm of even my last 2 days, you know, to make whatever adjustments I need. I have to give them time to. So I'll have a 3-day rhythm. I always have a 3-day rhythm. So the first day I'll do brave and true, I will be. Next day I'll do each good deed sets me free. And the next day I'll do each kind word makes me strong. And so that'll be my first week. The next week I'll bring the next 3.
Okay.
You know, and then you got to have something planned to continue. Maybe if you're going to do a 4-week block on this, another poem that you had maybe that you can work with, or you know, for the rest of for the last 2 blocks. But that's the format of my review, because I'm reviewing everything. I'm reviewing their letter formation. You know, they're doing that in practice work, and they're actually doing it when they do the book work. We're having some invented writing practice in the free rendering, and then and then we're having some practice recognizing the form of new blends. And so this will give you a good foundation.
Yeah, that sounds great.
For the capacities that they have to then move on with. Then the rest of the year is just basically fleshing out, because the next block after this would be your core word block, your sight word block. Mm-hmm. After you've done the math block, you know, then you'd come back and do a sight word block. And then then you'd see how. And I'll probably repeat. I'll probably repeat another. After I did the sight word block, I think I have a block where they are going to be doing a longer writing project of something that they also know about memory. And for me, sometimes it has been the Michaelmas song. We've just simply taken this Michaelmas song, that Country as Far as Country is Near, and they've worked together to do an invented writing on that. But it could be something else too. But it's got to be something important. It's got to be something they're committed to memory. Okay. And then after they have developed sight words, so now they have sight words. They worked on. They have worked on the review, and now they're ready about a 4th, 5th block toward Christmas time or something like that to see if they can put that all together, you know, into a writing, to actually write. Any questions on the language art?
No, that was great.
And again, remembering the whole point here is that you are working, memory is visceral. And so you're working, getting the memory in the body, whatever's already in the body, and you're drawing out of that the ability to recognize or sensorily perceive the phonetic blends, you know, out of that visceral memory.
And that helps too, because that chapter is really confusing to understand how that applies.
Yeah, and I'm leaving out the chapter that comes first, which is kind of important because in terms of the musical and sculptural forces and that whole thing with the etheric and the 4 things, it's an important thing to integrate into that. And I did give you a link, I think, in the folder I have for you. I linked you to a movie which I did with Miss Bain, where Miss Bain? Yeah, well, I'm going through that whole thing in more detail. Okay. That chapter. It's called Capacity Building or something like that. and I go through each year how that visceral and sensory thing is working with memory and perception.
Right. Awesome.
Okay, so then we have the math arts. And then by this time, this is probably, it's out the, so you've done, so it's more toward the really what we call the beginning of autumn, because this is going to be in September. And then you're going to be in October when you get to your first math arts, if you start with arts like this. And so then you're going to be having your autumn songs. And again, I had some sources. I don't know if you know Leaves Turn to Go. There's some beautiful pentatonic autumn songs. Okay. It's goes that this leaves turn to gold, orange and brown. Winds of the autumn bring all the leaves down. And my flute and my singing just go together. Whatever songs I bring is the singing are the songs that we learn on the flute. So I think what's another one? There's an Apple one. The thing is that when I did find a lot of resources for songs and things online. They weren't the songs that I have. But if you Google Waldorf songs and verses, there's amazingly a lot of stuff on there. But, and of course, you said you got a lot of resources from.
I did from the NTR.
So you can probably, just add what you're looking for, and then you're looking for autumn songs. Go with this math arts block. Now, for this one, you're not necessarily now. This is not where the children. Remember, in the first grade, the children were just taking it in. And we know in the second grade, they're going to transition now. And this is a good time because it's out to make them they should transition now to doing the math. But this block is transitioning them to the other. So you're not doing the columnar yet. You're going to introduce some of the concepts, but you're going to do in the horizontal. So what we're going to work in morning work, we're going to work with the number sense. And the number sense we're going to work with, so we're going to work with the tens, fives, and evens, of course. So in morning work, they might come in and have something to do like this. We're working with the tens, they put down 10 little things like that. And here's the way I do this. Then we'd go 1, and after the 1, they make a circle around the rest of them. And then they go back and make this circle. And then they would see that 10 equals 1 plus how many, and they could write that under it too. And so this is the work they're doing for morning work.
So we're still reviewing horizontal.
Right. This is still horizontal. Now you could do. So one day they could do tens. So they could just be a whole page of tens, that they could do, because they can do, I think like 8 different tens, or if they do a 10 itself, they can do 10 different tens. So they would do that one right under it. 10 equals 1 plus 9. Then they would do another 10, and they count 1, 2. And then they do the thing with that. Mm-hmm. And then they would put, that 10 equals 2 plus 8. Mm-hmm. They can practice those 10s like that. Then the other thing they can practice are the 5s. So then in this case they could do they could do the series of numbers like the larger numbers, like maybe 6, 7, 8, 9. And so like for 8, they do the same thing. They count 1, 2, because then they're doing 5s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Plus how many more? 1, 2, 3, and 5. So 8 equals 5 plus 3. So they're practicing the number sense around 5, because you want them to get very. These are things that you want to know. You want to know their tens by heart. You want to know how to orient around 5 by heart. And then doubles. And they can do doubles starting with 4 or even 2. And it's the same thing. You say that you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then they try to find double. 1, 2, 3. 3 plus 3 is a double for 6. 6 equals 3 plus 3. So in their morning work, they're practicing over the block their number sense around tens, 5s, and evens.
I know I have a copy of this, but I also just want to do this for my own note-taking.
Yeah. And then again, at the morning work, I have morning greeting, And then the movement that you would bring in this math block, you'd bring your skip counting. And that skip counting would include like your 2s to your 4s, 2, 3s, and 4s, definitely. I do 5s. I don't know if you have a sound for 5 skip counting. I do. When I did 5s, I think I showed you this. I do 5s as whole body thing. And I jump 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
10. You know.
Yeah. Okay.
I do 10s. I always look like I got a little mouse or something that's running under their feet, and they each jump as the mouse comes under their feet, and they count 10, 20 all the way around the circle, like that.
Oh, I've done the mouse jump, but how would you incorporate that with when they jump? They would say the number. Okay.
They say 10. Next person says 20. Next person says 30. Now I always teach them this is just for here, because if you have enough children, it's going to go above 100. On how many children you have, and I always teach them to say without the and. 110, 120, not 100. I teach them to say or 110, 120, 130, because I want them to say 100 when the 0 is there, to say and 103, 100. Okay. You know, so I teach when they don't have a 0 there to say the number without and. That's just sweet. I mean, that's not a big deal. I found it just rhythmically easier too, you know. And
when you would go into the hundreds.
Yeah, they can. I mean, they can do that. So if they have 14 children, then we get up to 140. You know. Mm-hmm. And then I usually go one way, like different places. So counting by tens.
My number of children is still in the air. I think it's going to be about 14 or.
Yeah.
Wait, no, I'm sorry, 12 or 13.
Okay. One of the greatest games in the world for math is Duck, Duck, Goose, because you can just adapt it all kinds of ways. Yeah. Like I can say, have them sit in a circle, and I can say, what's 3 times 5? And so somebody gets up who's selected, and they walk, and they're going to count by 5 3 times. So they go. And then when they get to the ounce, they go 15, they got to run.
I like
that person gets up and runs around after them.
Uh-huh.
And you can just adapt that Duck, Duck, Goose for all kinds of stuff. You know, it's a good simple game that allows you to give them a way to practice that. And then the ones who are sitting down are anticipating, and then the one who's getting up may not actually know when they're going to get to, like you do.
Right.
You know, 2 times 4, and they'll go, or 4 times 2, and they may or may not know how many to count, you know, and so it gets to be a little interesting there. I also did a lot of skip counting. I did jump roping, but not actually jump roping, going under the rope. And because this, I want them to be able to count, you know, waiting for their turn. Like one person is, if you're doing 4s and 4, the next person when they jump, they got to know when they go under it's 8. Next person has to go when they go under it's 12. So what I do is I do the rope, as it goes up, the person runs under. And you get to it, you want to get to it, they're all running under right away. So 4, the next person comes. 8, the next person comes. 12, they got to go under. And you can have all of them at first saying it all together. You can say it with them, and they just practice coordinating and running under. And then eventually they each are saying it on their own as they run under. Cool. And everyone else is being quiet. That's just one, but you can come up with all kinds of different ways to review in your movement the skip counting, basically. Another thing you can do is, and I think I maybe showed you this too, another we can work with tens again by having it coordinated with clapping and stomping. So I go, and then they got to do the rest with their feet.
Okay.
Then I say 10 equals, so this is at the end because this is more coordinated. I say 10 equals, and they got to go, oh, we did 4 claps, 4 plus 6. And so
We did that last year. That would be a nice next step, because last year I would do, I might do 3 plus, and then I'd say plus, and then we do that, and then
Right.
someone would raise their hand.
Right.
We did, we practiced, all 4 operations that way.
Right, so that's a good way for mental math.
So that's a nice next step for them to
This is,
finish it.
yeah, this is primarily just trying to get them oriented around 10,
Okay.
but you can do, that's mental math, which comes, of course,
Right.
next. Well, what happens, after mental math, I do free, so after the circle, I don't bring a mental math like that in circle. I've gotten up to the highest level of thinking that I'm going to do, and is that tens game. And then I go ahead and we come back and we do free rendering. And free rendering here is usually I try to review number quality. And so I might tell them, you might want to prompt this the day before. Then I'll say, who can draw a picture with something there's only one of in your picture, And you see what they do. Will they draw the sun? Will they draw themselves?
You said as rendering?
This is free rendering. And again, you can go ahead and have them, if you've already did the language arts block, go ahead and have them caption the free rendering. They can write what, so this is a little bit, taking to a little bit different level, because now they're trying to free render without it being something that's coming out of their visceral memory. They're just trying to remember, oh, I drew a sun. And they're trying to write that. So I do a lot of captioning of your free rendering. It's just a good way to get that invented writing practice. So I just did a whole lot of captioning of the free rendering. And then another day you can say, can you draw a picture of something that things that there are 5 of, I have 5 things on them, and they can figure out what those are. That's why it's free rendering. But I said you might want to prompt what you're going to do the next day, the day before a little bit for some. So at some point in the day before, talk about things that have 5s in them or whatever you're going to ask for, things that have 4. So next day when you do it, that goes into sleep. The next day when you bring it out for free rendering, it's more active there than if you just hit them with it, without prompting it first. Then after free rendering, then we again have a little bit of TAMARC practice. That's when I do the mental math. I want to do mental math, I'll do it after free rendering. And then we might do finger counting after rendering, different practice. So now we're doing practicing, and I would try to make sure that they can go 1, 2, 3, 4. You said 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then you can go on up to, as we move along through the block and we start regrouping the 10s. Of course, then you can start having one hand as your 1s and one hand as your 10s, and you can be going, count all the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you have 1, 10, and 0. Then you go 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Okay.
So you can kind of practice that just after mental math, having finger counting. And then we're going to get into horizontal regrouping of 10s. And we're going to addition, and you could do, as a block, you could do, since this is just a review, you could do a whole week of addition and then do some regrouping of subtraction, and then do multiplication and division. And so here's how you horizontally regroup. I got some stuff online about this, so I can find it. So you say what equals 6 plus 7, which again is really a subtraction problem, but here's how you do it. So they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then on the other, just like we normally do, on the other side, I got to put my little line in there, plus. And then and then what they do is they just count 10. They count. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many more do we need to make 10? 7, 8, 9, 10. They put those in parentheses. Then they can see the answer is going to be 13 because there are 3 left over.
Okay.
And that's how they regroup.
Right. So you're writing them dots out first.
Mm-hmm. So in reality, this is actually, I said, because there's that what in there, this is actually a subtraction problem, really, because well, no, it's not, because I did build it up. I build it up, and then I do an operation of regrouping on them, because I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I did the rest of it. So I did do them and then I do an operation. I do a regrouping operation on it. So this is addition, and then I do a regrouping operation.
Yeah, so I'm confused about what the objective would be.
The objective is for them to begin to see that whatever number goes in at 13 always has that
3 more than 10.
3 more than 10.
Okay.
And they do that over and over, and they get that pattern.
Nice. All right.
And then subtraction, they put down the 13, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, and then it tells them to subtract 6, so they count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then again count the 10, 7, 8, 9, 10, and they can see what, then they got 4 plus 3, it's 7.
Okay.
And so those would be the regrouping operations. And I was working on I can't remember exactly how I did multiplication and division, and I didn't like what I was remembering, so I'm going to work on that a little bit more, and I'll bring that to you.
Okay.
Because I kind of forgot how I did that for some reason.
That's how I feel every morning when I go into school.
Right. So that's your practice, and then you start, and then you put this in your book. You do some book work around this, and you can bring some imagery here too.
Okay.
Imagery I have, I did. I have. You can do the. You could possibly already bring the kings, bring the royal family here, even though you're doing it horizontally.
Mm-hmm.
You can begin to bring the royal family to introduce them. Because in the next block, you're going to bring the whole story and really develop the colonial process.
Okay.
But you could go ahead and transition here, or if you want to, use what you did last year. This is mostly review, but it's review introducing regrouping. And you might have did a little bit of regrouping, because I remember I told last year you can put a number of things on the table and you stack them into triangles. That's how we did regrouping in the first grade. How I did regrouping, I would give them 13 marbles. And I taught them how to make a 10 by stacking 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
And then you have a certain number left over. So we did,
Yeah.
And you can still do some manipulative regrouping like that too. Here we're going a little bit more graphical than we were in the first grade.
Can you tell me, because I didn't write it down the other day, the royal family, the king is...
So the king is associated with phlegmatic, and therefore is addition. I actually got a little blurb on that. That comes out of Barbelli's book. I got that around there somewhere. You heard of, what's his name, Barbelli? He wrote the first Waldorf book on teaching math. His name is Barravale. So if you can, they probably have a copy of his book.
Okay.
There.
Barravale. Okay. And then the prince was...
the prince is choleric, and his division.
And then the queen was...
Queen is melancholic.
Okay.
I have a poem for each one of those. You can make up your own. Because I always use, because when I guide the process on the board, when we start doing it, I have a poem that sends them through the regrouping process.
Okay.
And I had a poem for each one of those. And then the princess was sanguine, and it was multiplication. But you can look at math and use them, or you can come up with your own poems or whatever. But I told, so you can tell a nice story. I told you there's a phlegmatic prince, king, and I don't know exactly my story now, but you bring that quality out, and melancholic queen, and I had a lot of fun with that. I wish I would have wrote my story down, but I don't have
Just
it.
test.
Yeah. And
good.
they love to listen to it every day.
Right.
The story.
Aww.
It's
Must have been magical.
Okay, so basically, those are your two review blocks. And the point of these review blocks, again, if you look at this math block, you're trying to help them go back to the number sense, to be able to sense the numbers as unities, having the cardinal and ordinal values, but you're also trying to get them to see how those numbers are then, like in the case of you want them to have a sense of these are the phonetic blends, the 10, the 5, and whatever the doubles are, doubles are. But they're finding these now they're going to be finding how these are helping them with other numbers. That's how they can analyze other numbers, is by using 10, 5, and 2. 10, 5, and 2 are so they only have really 3 elements they need: 10, 5, and 2. As the corresponding unities but they're looking for those. They're learning to find those in all the other numbers. They're analyzing numbers like 8 and whatever they might be, and then this will be the same thing for analyzing hundreds, because hundreds is 10 plus 90, and 50 plus 30 is 80, and so these will be the foundational unities that they use to analyze the big numbers, that they start learning how to manipulate them. And this would be a good foundation. This dovetails right into understanding the algorithms. So the number sense really is the foundation for understanding the algorithms. Because when they start adding these things up, and if they have the sense of these unities in their mind, then they'll just see the addition operations and whatnot, and come out of it.
I wish I would have started with the numbers last year instead of the algorithm, because they were just like, why are we doing this? They didn't understand until I finally introduced that.
Right.
The numeric version. But you were saying that now it's better to go that way. This way.
Yeah, because they get engaged by this.
Right, exactly.
And then they want to use that to then you can utilize the story and the graphics as ways of giving them success in doing that. And that's something I just I found in my second group. My first group I didn't have that issue. In my second group, they just weren't interested in hearing the story before the story had a context like that.
My class is really awake. Obviously I didn't really have the full experience the first year, but just like watching Jack and Jade do math, they were pretty sleepy kids, especially Jack.
Right.
But this class is so awake. I mean, I could barely teach anything without them incorporating their own craziness. And I had one specific, Logan.
Yeah.
Logan Welsh was just bringing all kinds of stuff.
Right.
I'm so relieved he's not coming back, because I loved him as a little. He was so fun and interesting. Just loved watching him play. But he was just bringing too much to the classroom. Right,
exactly. Yeah, that's what it's that regurgitation. And so if you bring some children into a water environment, if they've had a lot of other media and things like that, all the movement now that does is bring it all up.
Yeah.
It just brings it up.
The whole class was vomiting.
Yeah, exactly. So do you want to look at your thing you did?
Yeah. Is that all we're doing today for that?
Yes. Okay. Listen, you have questions on this? I mean, I think.
No, I think it's pretty clear. Thank you. That brings a lot of relief to me too, because I feel like I don't have to be so worried about what I'm going to do for a little bit. I can really lay that out and get started on it. All right. Dig your horns into me.
Okay, well, so we started off with the feeling perception, and we said. So we sort of did this part.
Crew of pirate ship seeking treasure without direction steering the ship, and the waters were rocky. I said I'm part of the crew, just so it's clear.
Right, and then we had the crew, and the direction is ship.
Yeah, I didn't really know.
Well, let me see, so we have.
It's not easy,
well,
right?
Yeah.
There's so many different.
Well, the thing is that so let's look at this in terms of polarity. Polarity is the things that they're not like positive and negative.
Okay.
So there are things that are in opposition, at least in the statement. And what's in opposition in the statement here is the crew working to steer the ship and the treasure.
Oh, okay.
Those are the two things that are in opposition. The crew is actually more of the unifying thing between those two.
Okay, so the crew and the treasure?
No, not the crew.
No.
The crew working to steer the ship and the treasure, because those are the two opposing things. And so together they will create the success. But either the crew is treasure seeking. Remember, that's the thing and that's how they can think of.
Yeah.
Or they are staying focused and directing the ship, working on steering the ship.
Right.
And those two things are in opposition.
Okay, I got it.
And then the crew is just the unifying thing, which includes you as the captain. And so then we say, how is the treasure related to the crew? Well, the crew is seeking, treasure in there. The crew is seeking the treasure, and the crew, of course, must steer the ship. And that's how that's the connection. So the crew becomes the unifying thing, rather than in opposition to the direction of the ship.
So the crew, and then.
Well, the crew doesn't go here. We just say that in both cases, this is the crew. The crew is doing two things. The crew is over here steering the ship, so you can just put crew. Like you don't put crew here. How are these things unified? They're unified by the crew. Is the point.
Okay.
So crew steering the ship, crew seeking treasure, and these are the things. So this is steering the ship, and this is treasure seeking. And this is over here is the unity it has with this is that the crew is going to be doing these things, one or the other, and they're kind of in a position.
So these are both crew?
Yeah, this is the crew relating to the directing slip, and you might come up with a quality here. So we say, how is the crew relating to treasure? And you could put that here. So you can say impatient, or whatever, and then you can say, how is the crew relating to direction seeking, unfocused?
Oh, good, yeah.
We want to increase their focus here and increase their patience here.
I just thought of something which is really interesting. My class is working to steer the ship to get to the treasure, and my class had this weird fixation with trinkets. I know a lot of kids do that, but most of the class had it. They had to have trinkets.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of kids who gravitate toward that, but
right.
it was like a plague in there, and eventually that kind of calmed down toward the end of the year once I was able to work on some things to support it, but.
And this is okay for opposition, because we say the success of this is that the crew does become patient, and therefore it's focused. If they don't become patient and focused, then they end up, destroying the ship. In opposition to this is the destruction of the ship. So here is a successful
it's either
opposition.
or. This is either or. Works in harmony or destroys the ship.
No, it's let's just let it be that they either succeed or they don't succeed.
Okay.
That's how I would do it. Okay. And then in the middle you can say the resolution is that, of course, if you captain the ship, then they will find the treasure.
Okay.
If they become patient and focused, then they overcome this tendency and they find the treasure. Okay, so now we got to remember these are images. We already worked a little bit too far out of imagery, but we have an image of a crew on a pirate ship, and we have an image of the crew being treasure-seeking, being greedy, impatient treasure seekers, and we have an image of them being failing to steer, unfocused and steering, not working together to steer the ship. And then we have an image of them becoming patient and working together to steer the ship. So now what we want to do is we want to get the revelations out of this.
Okay.
We don't want to. Got to be careful putting the next part. Here's the most difficult part.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do.
Okay, so we want to look at this. We got to look at the image itself, and we got to say in the relationship between these things. Now, what we see, a lot of times look at the polarity itself. The polarity what information is this polarity giving us? We have crew. Oh, that's right. Remember, so one of the elements we have is the idea. We have the pirate ship, and we have the crew. So those are really the images we want to look at. What is the ideal pirate ship revealed to us? You know, about the curriculum. Remember the curriculum. So we got to go back to curriculum. Curriculum is we look at what it tells us about the capacity building of the year. The capacity building of the year is this whole thing of analysis. You know, so we can look at when we think of what is the idea of a pirate ship crew. This whole thing tells us about analysis and what can strengthen and weaken. Oh, but we said another goal for the class was the we said the goal. The other thing is not just that capacity, but we talked about the just to go for social cohesiveness.
Yeah.
That's one.
And that's where I had a hard time with this page, because I kept thinking about my image, and I was thinking, is this a social issue or is this a curriculum thing, you know, that I'm trying to work through? Like, I couldn't figure out whether it was one or
usually
the
it's
other.
curriculum, but you know, I mean, we might see how the way we're going to work, how this may give us ideas to work on the curriculum in such a way that it enhances
to help support them. Okay.
You know, and so we want to look at this ideal crew, pirate ship. So yeah, we want to stay with crew and pirate ship. Oh, we're always forgetting a little bit our calendar of the soul, which is based on the water. You know, that's going to be that would be more the next one.
I thought about that, but it seemed to add too many factors, and I
just
didn't know how to.
It can incorporate in the next one.
Okay.
But a ship. What is it? A ship on the water. What does it tell us about either social analysis, the character of that that we might want to be looking at? In this case, one element of this is that this picture is more a picture in time. So that's one thing we can look at this. This is more like this is not a picture, because the ship has to move, it's to go someplace. So it could be a very different picture. You know, for instance, if you have an opposition there. Getting to the treasure is a picture in time, but the work that crew does is a picture in space. You know, right on the ship. You know, we look at the ship, then we have a spatial element. Those are the elements. So we can look at those right now, really. As so we can put up here. We have crew and ship, and what does it tell us about analysis? The cognitive capacity of analysis. What does it reveal to us? What is there? And the one thing we recognize is that it gives us a polarity, and a polarity is a polarity in terms of how the Tamarts are expressed as seeking of treasure. So you have seeking of treasure over here. So this is an expression. We can look at this as how things are going to be expressed in the Tamarts.
Okay.
And then over here we have the crew steering the ship as a way we can make an indication of how we're going to look at space arts. Because those are our two things we really have to look at. So we can ask ourselves, you know, this idea of the Tamart, that gives us information right there. It tells us that you might want to be weary of. It tells us that Tamarts should be, probably in my sense, the Tamarts you want to make sure are very much methodical and disciplined. The Tamarts, so that the treasure seeking of the Tamarts doesn't. You know, an example is just doing a skip counting. Are they actually doing the feet work right? Okay. So we focus on that. Don't let them be going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right. And not actually doing 1, 2, 3. You try to really get them into that. And one way you have to do that, make sure they pause. You know, I'm a lad, light and gay. So you first focus on the pauses. And then, after you focus on the pauses, you got them doing the pauses, then you focus on making sure they're doing the number of steps in between. So that might be one thing that you might want to look at in the time watch. And this could be just the opposite. It could be that the children, we could have had an image that said that they were lethargic, or we might want to speed up the time mark. But this one, I think, is indicating that with the whole treasure-seeking thing, that the time mark, we might want to look at making sure that they aren't just treasure-seeking and not being here now in it. And now in the space art, think about the deck of a ship, a pirate ship. What if you were thinking about doing a drawing in your book, and say if you looked at one of the children's drawing and you characterized this looks like the deck of a pirate ship, what would you be saying about it?
What would I be saying about?
Of a child park shooter main lesson book. They did a drawing, and you looked at it and your picture, and you saw this looks like the deck of a pirate ship. What would you be saying about that? What would that simile mean? That someone's drawings look like the deck of a pirate ship.
What would the deck look like?
Yeah, deck of a pirate ship. I'm using that as a simile for what they're drawing. I could say, I'm gonna give you an example. I could say this looks like a pigsty. It's more obvious that, what maybe I'm thinking the drawing than what the drawing looks like, because I say it's a pigsty, made dirty, but what we're saying, it looks like the deck of a pirate ship.
What would the child's drawing have looked like if I said that?
If you said that, yeah.
Chaos, unorganized.
Can we
My
be more
image of
specific?
the children on a pirate ship is like with the first week of school when you're trying to teach them how to do like their cleaning period, their housekeeping period,
Mm-hmm.
and no one knows how to do their job, and they're just like fighting over the broom.
Right.
That's
right.
my vision of that.
Yeah. So and let's take the word chaos really well. Chaos, and then where's the underlying root to chaos? I'm gonna give you some examples. The chaos could arise out of sensory integration issues, and might be an indication because in reality, to run a ship, everything has its place. Everything, you have things which are functional, yet if they're not aware of the functionality because of their lack of capacity, like say for instance, they draw a picture, and in the picture, when we draw pictures in the water curriculum, we are using the spatial relationships to indicate a concept. Mm-hmm. And say the children don't, that's not there. The children don't draw in response to what we like, so their picture doesn't hold the concept. Say you had things, one thing was small and one thing was big, things were placed in certain places, but when they put them on their paper, they placed them anywhere. And the thing that was tall is just short. No, they're all the same size. So they didn't perceive the functionality at all of the, of how the ship is sailed.
Right.
And so there would be an element that you would have to then look at, is the fact that in this case, as pirates, they haven't really learned, how the things on the ship function to steer it properly. And that's something that you may have to be looking at. So how do I make sure when I look at their drawings, if I have drawn on the board some indicator like here, that's even what we have right here. We have this graphic. Will the children be able to orient this graphic correctly? This is like not being able to steer the ship, not knowing the functionality of the mast and the different oar and things on the ship, so that we end up with this sort of chaos. But the chaos is born out of this not in the moment recognizing, no, this is the mast, this is the sail,
right.
These are how the things fit together. And, just be something that you have in your consciousness in terms of working with the curriculum. It's a normal thing in the first grade, but this may indicate that you may have more than that, because the children have a lack of ability,
Yeah, for example, a lot of them, do you need to get that?
No, I don't have some phone listening.
I emailed you today and I was probably isn't going to check this, and I'll probably call him, and I don't know if he'll answer, and I don't know, and then he'll be waiting for me.
Oh, you think it's for you?
Yeah, because I emailed you to make sure, because I didn't know if you'd answer the phone if I called. I emailed you today about meeting later.
Right. Oh,
But you did
you
answer
called
the
me. I did
phone.
because you had heart on there.
Yeah,
And I said, oh,
see?
wait. You got lucky there. Because I tell you.
Anyway, yeah, I noticed some of the children, most of them, really want to follow the
Right.
order, which I might lay that out, but then there's so many of them that just don't even look at it twice, and they just start putting it down.
Exactly.
I mean, I could say this is exactly how we're doing it, and I have children like William Hunter is just rushing to him well enough to know how he operates.
Right. And so that's something we're going to have to think about in your curriculum to help the children out.
Okay.
How they're going to really learn what these things on the pirate ship, how they really function together so that they can steer the ship. Otherwise they aren't going to be able to steer the ship. They're going to be frustrated. They want the treasure. So they're, and all of this will help, even the time warp part, getting them to pause between the parts of the skip counting. All of that's going to help their sensory integration, so you're kind of bringing these to this is like getting them to be patient. Getting them to be patient here will help them be able to recognize what the functionality is in the ship over here, and so we can say that, so we can maybe re-articulate just a little bit in the light of what we've said here, that you need here in regard to the time arts, we need to bring more clear, when you're playing music, this is really rest and melody. You got to get the beat of the beat has to be brought clearly. The rhythm has to be brought clearly. Is one of our goals in this. And so we have rhythm, and I think we have rhythm in place, really, because space arts place. So here's where the mass is, and so we can actually kind of rethink this and say that the pirate ship represents the need for for encouraging a sense of rhythm and place for the children. Because without that, they won't be able to steer the ship.
I don't know why I do that, but maybe there's a reason for it. When I write words, I skip letters and write the end, and then have to go back and insert the letter. Do you do that? Is that normal? Like if I go to write place, I'll write and then I have forgotten the A. But I already have it in my head. I know that it goes there.
Well,
it's
maybe
the weirdest thing.
Yeah, maybe because ultimately as adults, we read visually, visual recognition. We don't. That's why you've seen those. I don't know if you've seen those things they write where all the letters are left out, and we still can read it. We can read it because we actually have visual recognition of the shape of the letter, and we actually read by that. So we can still read it, even though all the letters are gone.
It's like I don't need it anymore, so I've just excluded it.
And so what comes to you is the visual picture of the word. And the visual picture, you don't need the other short letters. All you need is the PL, and then the rest of it is
PLC, and I know what it means.
Right. So it could be just
developing some kind of dyslexia.
Well, we all develop a dyslexia in a sense. We all develop that capacity to ignore the actual phonetic quality of the word and only do visual recognition. So this is, we haven't done all these, but then the next part of this, of course, is to, and I think it's where we can use our calendar of the year. This is where we use the real report that we have when we had these 4 seasons. I don't know if you remember, you have it written down still. I wrote it back here.
No, we have that in your note.
Yeah. So in terms of the water, we talked about how we're starting in the autumn, and the wind, it's windy, and so the water's a little bit choppy. So then what we're going to do is kind of look at that seasonal element and see if we can bring, well, and really at this point you're trying to bring it down to the, no, this is not the right one. I'll leave the next one.
That's the last one I had.
should
This
have
is
one.
the same. It's
Oh,
structural.
you're missing one then.
There's only 3, right?
Oh, this is it right here. Oh, we've been working the wrong one. We should have been working on this one. This one we wrote over here? Oh, which one we just did? Where's the one we just did?
This is page 2. 1, 2, that's page 3.
No, this is page 3, supposedly.
Oh, whoops. We just got them backwards.
Yeah, because
So
this is what we're
let's
doing
just put-
last.
We'll just change, there's nothing written in it, so let's just put page 3. This is page,
Well, but we already wrote this, right? That's what we just wrote?
yeah, we just wrote that.
So that's page 2. So let's put 2 on there, because this is what we should have been writing 2. This should be 3 over here.
Right.
3
Just
should be
is-
about
just
this.
This is the wrong part.
Yeah, exactly. And so now we're actually looking at how based on this needs of the curriculum, we're going to structure our 2-fold and 3-fold lessons. And we already talked a little bit about that because the 2-fold lessons is space and time arc, and the 3-fold lessons are will and feeling and thinking. And so we're going to ask ourselves, how do we now, what do we bring to these to be able to achieve this?
Right.
And so, what do we have up here? We're already close because we said it represents the need for rhythm and place, which is really already working with the 2-fold lesson. So it's saying that one thing you're going to do is really like, and I do a lot with the 2-fold lesson. You see, I have more in and out breaths than most people do in their morning lesson, and that's why I have the morning work as an in breath, and then I have the out breath. So you can be looking at this, and you're looking at the morning work, and you're asking yourself, and in the space arts, how am I paying attention to place? You know, how am I making sure that the children are being aware of how the children are having with place and position, and also what's the other word? And measure, I guess, because whether things are tall when they're supposed to be tall and short when they're supposed to be short. We just take the example of morning work right here is the alphabet. So that's the alphabet, the letters. So letters are definitely a thing where we're looking at place and looking at orientation, and so it's saying that that's going to be an important element there. Is that we try to come up with ways that we're going to enhance that capacity in the children for that. And I did that with a poem, and I don't know if I can find that poem again. I had a whole poem. It was earth, wind, it was the 4 elements, and each of the elements described how you made a certain kind of ladder. I had earth ladders, and I had wind ladders, and fire ladders. And so I could use those poems when I saw the children weren't paying attention to this stuff. I used those poems to reinforce my expectations for that letter writing. So you might look at that and have some elements to help them with the quality of place and position.
See, I did it again. Reinforce.
Just throw away the vowels. I don't know, maybe you're a constant kind of person, a letter kind of person. I don't know. So yeah. And so that's what you're going to be doing, looking at then. You're going to take these ideals, and now you take these needs, and you take these elements, and you try to plug them into the daily rhythm. Where am I going to work on these in the daily rhythm? That's the 2- and 3-fold rhythm of the day. Okay. And that's what you want to get some ideals down about how you're going to do that. Like we just said, one way is to make sure you have a poem that helps them with the letter formation. The next thing is the movement. So now we're in a rhythmic place, and we talked about things you want to focus on the rhythm, and you want to make sure they get where are the pauses, that are there in whatever movement activities, because that's the most important thing. When you're doing the rhythm.
Am I supposed to be putting this in here, or is that something else?
Well, that's what this ideal. You can do it later, but we just talked about. So this, in general, we want to we copied. Did you put that in already?
I already had that, and this is what I was working with. But
so we can just say that we can just copy what we had over here. We want to be working with rhythm and place. Okay. That would be our thing. And the polarity is obviously here, the rhythm and place. But we know what we want to add. We want to say what, how. So we just talked about then we're going to talk about how we're going to motivate these things. You can just go through here now, through your day, and look at when you're working in the time arts and when you're working in the space arts. And ask yourself, how are you then going to enrich the capacity of the children to become aware of rhythm and place?
Mm-hmm.
And in general, in the time arts, you're talking about making sure their breaths, their pauses, and in the space arts, you got to have kind of ways of motivating the attention. So here you have breathing. So breathing and attention are kind of the two things. In terms of rhythm, it's breathing. You got to make sure that the pause is in the breathing.
Okay.
And in
I think I should put rhythm and place on one of these, like on a opposing side.
yeah, I mean this is breathing is rhythm, so you can put rhythm over here.
Okay.
So in here we're looking at the pauses in breathing. We want to try to bring attention to those as we're doing the time art elements that are in our thing. You can even look even in morning greeting. You can be looking at that. All the different places where you're working with a time art element, you want to movement or wherever. Even like and we have to like this buck duh, making sure you get that rhythm. Buck duh, so they don't go buck duh fugga. They go buck duh. You know, pay attention to that.
Right.
Wherever you're working with rhythm, pay attention to the pauses and the in-breath to try to enrich that for them. And then over here, if this is breathing, this would be more like attention. Place, we want them to become attentive to so you're on a ship. You're on a ship. You want them to be attentive to, you know, a little bit of the place and position, the measure, attentive to what's that in general? In
It's
space.
like
Well, what you want them to have attention to is relation. Yeah, so that's it. And you got to think about how you do that. So the relation. You want to be attentive to relationships that are in the spatial. In the spatial.
that's punny.
Relationships. Glad you saw that, because I pun to my wife's distress. And I missed that one. But yeah, exactly, the relationships. And so that if you draw something, and this one being short and one being tall is important, somehow you have to have maybe, and like in the case of the letters, you know, we have a point to bring attention to the relationships between the different kinds of words. And same thing, you might want to find that in other, it's another example. Well, when you're drawing pictures in general, let me think of another concept you might be drawing.
Yeah.
Well, even here, right here, with this relationships, we have this thing right here, this separation, this before and after element, that they don't miss that. I mean, we can draw this graphic and put that in there, and we can maybe not bring attention to that enough, so that they don't really get it. So how can we bring attention to this?
Well, yeah, and bringing that
parentheses and counting to 10, all of these are things that we want them to, we need to know that we need to have some awareness of how we have actually reinforced that relationship, not just put it before them.
It's almost like the methods, right? It's their method of, does that make sense? Like the following the method that I'm teaching.
Right, they're following it.
It's like also goes back to following my ego presence, which relates to the
you being the captain and because what it is, you can do this and they could be inattentive to why you put it there.
Right.
And so this idea that, so you might say there were 6 before, you know, and maybe before I closed the door. You know, you would use some little quality, you'd try to enrich that in their mind. And it could be just that, making a little bit of a poem there. And you would have to know that, if I just write this in a graphic thing and put the line there, and I don't use maybe some verse, some way. It's like in general, the relationships that those poems I talked about when we're doing the phlegmatic thing, the themes, I have these poems, and that's what those poems do. The poems draw attention by saying the poem, the children make a mistake, I go back to the poem, and I read the poem again. Yeah. And so that poem, those poems are really important ways. Poems are really important ways to be able to remind children of what you want them to be attentive to. So I'll try to get more. Well, I got food to offer you.
Is that for me?
I'll put it to you. Well, I was going to eat it too, but then I said, well.
I'm starving. Can I have some?
Yes, you may have some fruit.
Did you hear my belly?
No, I didn't hear your belly. But
Thanks.
So yeah, I mean, and I can, like I said, I'll get you those 4 poems I wrote, and then you can. But poems seems to be the way that I work with the actual content, relationships, is to write a poem to bring attention to whatever I want to bring attention to. So I just have a few rhyming words that are in there to help bring attention to that kind of stuff like that. So.
What about this part?
Well, if you go all the way through detail, you get even more. We still haven't really worked with the willing, feeling, and thinking, aspect of this. So how would this inform willing, feeling, and thinking? When we're basically using the twofold here, we did the twofold articulation quite well, and this tends to present itself. What about in here? There it is. The threefold is going to be in that seasonal water. The water is obviously, the whole thing with the calm seas. So that's how we can look at the threefoldness. We have this thing we did last week. We're looking at that the journey itself during the year, and then you can take and ask yourself, how do I make a microcosm of the journey through the year in each day a little bit. And if we look at the 4 seasons as including willing, feeling, and thinking, and then maybe some resolution. So we have the windy element, which is the rough waters, and then we had the calm seas, the doldrums, and what was it? I got it right here. And then we had, I skipped one. So we had calm, and we had the doldrums. The doldrums were the winter time. Is that all we did was the 3? I think we just did 3. So
we
that
did
works.
3, yeah.
So we have the calm. So we have the choppy waters, the calm seas, and then how did we characterize the spring? Because we don't really have summer. How did we characterize the spring, though? We had something. Did I characterize?
Spring was like their satisfaction of their arrival.
The currents. That was the difference. The choppy waters were a result of the wind blowing. And then the current flowing was the spring. The current flowing is the doldrums are over and the currents are flowing. And now the water is moving us along, whereas the wind was causing difficulty before. That's an interesting distinction to look at in terms of what's causing, whether you're dealing with wind or water as the moving element. And so we're saying in the autumn, we have a windy kind of situation. And then we have the water coming into its element in the spring and taking us on, to our destination. And then we have the calmness. So in terms of willing, feeling, and thinking, we're trying to intuit which of these seasonal qualities are we bringing to willing, feeling, and thinking for these children. And who are they in their will, and what we need to bring? You would think in their will that we need to think about maybe the willing. This could even go into terms of how we even set up a rhythm in a circle. Do we start with willing? Do we start with the feeling content? Usually you want to go willing, feeling, and thinking in a circle. But in this case, I think it's the feeling content that is the choppy waters. It's the wind element.
That sounds right.
And so there seems to be this necessity to move that feeling content of the class into a calm place if we're going to really direct their wheels. You know, so and we talked about engagement. So he's telling me that, yeah, you need to engage the filling content as a way of, for these children, you need, so I would say you need to work with your astral content, which are the poems and things like that. You know, making sure that you have little poems and things that help the children see relationships, to help direct them in the classroom. Really, I mean, that's something it really works. I use those. Even now, I go down to this count, and I use my poems. You know, sitting like the royal and the wise. You know, 1, 2, 3, give me your attention, please. I use these little astral poems to direct, rather than doing. I talked about using less commands before, direct commands, and so you need to engage the children's feeling life with this astral content, and therefore be able to give you capacity to direct their will more when you need them to really do the work. In the winter is, so their willing this time is more of the winter element, and their feeling is more the autumn element, and then their thinking can emerge in the spring. And the thinking then, and the water, the current metaphor works because the thinking then will emerge, you know, as the current that takes them on to where they need to go. And so now we have some incorporation. So whenever you're thinking of a day, and you're thinking of bringing the willing, feeling, thinking element throughout the day, be thinking of, okay, well, I'm going to be bringing the feeling element here. I want to get them in their wheel, so I got to make sure that I have imagery that I'm going to engage their feeling life, so that they come with me and they don't go somewhere else regurgitating and take off in a different direction. Then I can move their willing to steer the ship. And then we'll discover these currents that are under us and taking us in a certain direction, you know.
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head with that.
Yeah, metaphor is similar. When I was in my first group of children I had, by the time we got to 5th grade, we were studying, I don't know if you know the Mahabharata. So it's ancient Indian story we tell in the 5th grade, and it's about the Pandava brothers. And Pandava, they're 5 brothers, and they go on this whole journey. There's this whole big wars, and it's a wonderful story for the 5th grade children. I really love it. And then we were also doing how to write an expository paper, you know, our persuasive paper also. And I said, can you all see how the 5 Pandava brothers are related to writing, you know, a persuasive paper? They said, no, Mr. Joppa, but we're sure you will, you know, make up something. The point is, I'm saying that I'm good with metaphors.
I know you are.
So, and by the time I got to 5th grade with them, they said, oh yeah, we're sure you can make up something, Mr. Joppa. You're good at that.
Nice.
Yeah.